Too provocative, too bold, too defiant. These westerns shattered every rule Hollywood dared to set. One was banned over nothing more than exposed cleavage. Another faced outrage for killing real horses. From pushing sexual boundaries to challenging racial norms, these are the 10 Western films that were banned, boycotted, and buried by censors, yet still refuse to be forgotten. The Outlaw, 1943, wasn't just a film, it was a scandal wrapped in a cowboy hat. Directed by Howard Hughes and starring Jane Russell, this Western wasn't known for its shootouts or saloon brawls, it was the cleavage that sparked a war with Hollywood censors. Hughes famously designed a custom bra for Russell to enhance her bust, and even though she reportedly didn't wear it, the marketing campaign revolved entirely around her chest. The film was condemned by the Hays Code enforcers, banned in several states, and delayed for years before it saw a full release. Hughes didn't just push boundaries, he tore them down with scandalous posters and suggestive trailers that made The Outlaw one of the most talked about films of the decade. Critics called it trashy, but audiences were intrigued. Was it a Western? A pin-up showcase? Or a publicity stunt dressed in cowboy boots? Either way, The Outlaw became a symbol of defiance against censorship, and a turning point where sex appeal started riding shotgun in American cinema. When A Man Called Horse, 1970, hit theaters, it didn't just stir controversy, it stunned audiences. Starring Richard Harris as an English aristocrat captured by the Sioux, the film attempted to portray Native American life with a raw, unflinching lens. But what truly set it apart, and pushed it into the realm of controversy, were its brutal rituals and cultural depictions. The most infamous scene? A graphic and painful initiation ceremony where Harris's character is suspended from hooks pierced through his chest. Audiences were horrified. Critics were divided. Was it authentic storytelling or exploitative shock value? Some Native groups praised its effort at cultural realism, while others slammed it for romanticizing or distorting indigenous traditions. Censors in several countries demanded cuts, and many theaters refused to screen it altogether. Even the film's nudity and violence were enough to draw the ire of the more conservative crowd. A Man Called Horse may have been a Western, but it didn't ride the familiar trail. Instead, it galloped into a gray zone of cultural appropriation, painful realism, and cinematic daring. Five Savage Men, 1971, didn't just cross the line, it erased it entirely. Also known as The Animals, this gritty Western ignited outrage for its raw depiction of sexual violence, racism, and revenge. The story follows a Native American man who rescues a white woman after she's brutally assaulted by a gang of outlaws. What unfolds is a brutal tale of vengeance and survival, but it's the graphic content that triggered an uproar. The film opens with a disturbing rape scene that many deemed unnecessarily exploitative, even by the lenient standards of the early 70s. Critics accused it of using sexual violence as cheap shock value, while some praised its unflinching portrayal of frontier brutality. Still, the backlash was swift, theaters pulled the film, and several countries slapped it with bans or extreme censorship. While marketed as a revenge Western, Five Savage Men pushed into grindhouse territory, blurring the line between social commentary and sleaze. Today, it's remembered less for its storytelling and more for the ethical questions it raised. How far is too far when depicting violence in the name of realism? Duel in the Sun, 1946, was nicknamed Lust in the Dust for a reason. Directed by King Vidor and produced by David O. Selznick, this Technicolor epic scandalized 1940s audiences with its raw sexuality, racial tension, and moral ambiguity. Jennifer Jones stars as Pearl Chavez, a mixed-race woman torn between two brothers, one gentle, one dangerously wild. But it was Pearl's sensuality, her smoldering chemistry with Gregory Peck, and her relentless defiance of societal norms that triggered outrage. The Catholic Church condemned the film for its immoral content, calling it a threat to public decency. Censors forced multiple edits, yet it still pushed boundaries with steamy kisses, suggestive dancing, and one of the most controversial love triangles in film history. Behind the scenes, Selznick's obsession with Jones, his real-life mistress, only added to the scandal. Duel in the Sun wasn't just a Western, it was a defiant explosion of passion, violence, and taboo that Hollywood tried to silence. But the film's legacy endured, proving that censorship can't always tame the wildest hearts of the West. Navajo Joe, 1966, wasn't just a spaghetti Western, it was a cultural landmine. Starring Burt Reynolds as a Native American Avenger, the film drew immediate fire for its casting choice and portrayal of indigenous people. Reynolds, who was of part native descent, played the title role in a costume and hairstyle that leaned more on stereotype than authenticity. The plot follows Joe, the lone survivor of a native massacre, as he seeks brutal revenge on the white outlaws who slaughtered his tribe. While it delivered the blood-soaked action audiences expected from director Sergio Corbucci, it also leaned heavily on racial clichés and exaggerated violence. Native American groups criticized it for its one-dimensional representation and lack of cultural respect, while some critics dismissed it as exploitative pulp. But what really pushed Navajo Joe into controversial territory was its brutal tone, excessive gore, and the uncomfortable fusion of Western fantasy with indigenous suffering. Though the film has gained cult status over the years, it remains a glaring example of how Hollywood, and Europe, tried to profit from indigenous stories without fully understanding them. When Django hit screens in 1966, it redefined violence in Western cinema, and not in a subtle way. Directed by Sergio Corbucci and starring Franco Nero, Django was blood-soaked, grimy, and unapologetically brutal. The film follows a mysterious drifter dragging a coffin through the mud, only to reveal a machine gun inside, unleashing death upon a racist militia. Django didn't just push the envelope, it ripped it open and threw it in the fire. Its relentless violence, including scenes of ear-cutting, whippings, and mass shootings, shocked European censors. In fact, the film was outright banned in several countries, including the UK, where it remained prohibited for over 2 decades. The controversy wasn't just about gore, it was the nihilism. Unlike the classic American cowboy, Django wasn't a hero. He was an anti-hero in a world without mercy. Yet beneath the carnage, the film carried harsh critiques of racism, greed, and fascism. Still, it was the body count people remembered. Django became both a cult icon and a lightning rod for censorship, proving that Westerns didn't need wide-open prairies, they needed grit, mud, and moral chaos. Sergeant Rutledge, 1960, was a Western ahead of its time, and Hollywood didn't know how to handle it. Directed by the legendary John Ford, the film broke racial ground by casting Woody Strode, a black actor, in the lead role of a U.S. Army sergeant falsely accused of raping and murdering a white girl. Set against the backdrop of a courtroom drama, the film explored themes of racism, justice, and honor, topics rarely tackled so directly in Westerns of the era. But despite Ford's prestige, the film faced backlash. Southern theaters boycotted it. Advertisers stayed away. And critics, uncomfortable with its subject matter, either ignored it or panned it. For many, the idea of a black man as the heroic centerpiece of a Western was simply too much. Yet Sergeant Rutledge quietly made history, challenging the genre's whiteness and planting seeds for change. While it wasn't banned outright, it was censored by silence, a powerful film stifled by the era's racism. Today, it's seen as a forgotten gem, brave, bold, and decades ahead of the Western curve. Rust, 2010, is one of the most haunting and controversial Westerns in recent memory, but not for typical reasons. The film's notoriety doesn't come from its storyline or violence, but from a tragic real-life incident on set. During filming, a prop gun accidentally discharged, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins and injuring director Joel Souza. This devastating event sparked global outrage, reignited debates on safety standards in Hollywood, and led to widespread calls for reform. Beyond the tragedy, Rust's gritty, low-budget aesthetic and raw depiction of frontier life challenged the polished, sanitized Westerns audiences were used to. It embraced a darker, more realistic vision of the West, one filled with moral ambiguity, hardship, and tension. While the film itself faced boycotts and controversy surrounding the production, Rust also became a symbol of Hollywood's reckoning with its past negligence. The tragedy overshadowed the movie's content, but it forced the industry to confront how far it must go to protect its cast and crew. In that way, Rust is a grim reminder that some controversies hit closer to home than any scripted scene ever could.